Welcome back, Mr. Ayo Gbeleyi joins us from our Abuja studio. He's a public finance professional. Speaking about the economy and the budget, I mean, the comment already that the economy is in recession. Do you agree with that? Oh, damn, I'm still not sure he can hear us.
You can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Your question pertains to whether the Nigerian economy is in recession or not.
Yes.
Clearly and fundamentally, the Nigerian economy is not in recession. An economy that recorded 3.96 GDP growth rates in Q1 of 2015, 2.3 in Q2 of 2015, 2.8% growth rate in Q3 of 2015, and of course finally 2.11 in Q4 of 2015, delivering a cumulative GDP growth rate for last year of 2.8% compared with 6.2% the previous year, is not actually in recession. It is what we're referred to in economics terms as an economy that is slowing down. I give you an example. The Chinese economy, which until recently was growing at a double digits, over 10% real GDP growth rate, that is now slowed down in 2015 to 6.8%, is not clearly in recession. But what we are seeing is a cooling off of that economy. When you talk about recession, the classical definition is you must actually have recorded 2 consecutive quarters of negative contraction of real GDP. And the cases in point that we can cite in current times are like what we are seeing in Russia, which last year closed at about 3.7% negative GDP growth rate. Brazil at about 3.8%. Venezuela is also in that realm, and of course Japan used to be also a classical case of that. So clearly Nigeria is not in recession. What we are experiencing is a GDP growth rate that is slowing, but hopefully with the efforts that are being put in the current year and all the programs of government, the reflationary budget, we should begin to see a pickup of the GDP in the current year.
You know, that is one debate on the other, on one hand, and we also have another debate which has to do with what you would want to call tough choice that this government needs to make, to devalue or not to devalue the naira. From your expert viewpoint, how does this come to you?
If I hear you very well, you're speaking to the issues of the devaluation of the naira. Yeah, there are always 2 sides to this argument. Those who are for devaluation and those who are against. For those who are for devaluation, they believe that market efficiency is the best way to allocate scarce resources. So if we have a supply challenge of our foreign exchange, wherein over 90% of our foreign exchange earnings are dependent on crude oil sales, and that has come down now by over 70%. Therefore, we certainly need to cut our coat, not necessarily according to our size, but according to the size of the cloth. And with that, you can also tame the challenge of speculators who tend to round-trip currency to take arbitrage opportunity between an official rate and a parallel exchange rate. But having said that, let's look at the flip side. We're talking about a country where we're highly dependent on imports, and we're also a monopolistic economy where oil is 90% of our foreign earnings. So if you devalue your currency, if we were, an European country, or you are, a United States, or you are China, or even Brazil, and your currency is devalued, you have a manufacturing export base where you can export products competitively into the world and earn more foreign exchange. That is not our situation. If you track what has been happening since the days of SAP, Structural Adjustment Program in 1986, when the currency was devalued from where it was then at almost 1-to-1 to the US dollar, initially to about 7 naira to a dollar, over time 22 naira, 80 naira, and where we are today at about 198 naira to the dollar. To what extent have we managed to diversify the economy such that we have reduced the dependency on oil and gas as the mainstay of the foreign exchange earning base of our economy? Clearly, we are not making sufficient traction in that regard. So, if we do then have to devalue the currency as it were today, it means that you are going to see more imported inflation. And we're already seeing the impact, because if you look at what is happening with parallel market trade, until recently it trended close to 400 naira psychological threshold. Now parallel market appears to be stabilizing around 320, 340 naira to the dollar, while official rate remains at 198. We just saw inflation figures for February released by National Bureau of Statistics yesterday, which has notched up from 9.6% in January to 11.4% in February. And what are the main contributing factors? The issue of currency, the issue of imported inflation, the issue of the price of PMS, the premium motor spirit, popularly called petrol, etc. So the challenge then becomes that devalue the currency and more people will be taken out of a threshold where they can sufficiently make ends meet and make decent living, because it will trickle down into cost of transportation, it will trickle down into cost of produce. Recently, I was, talking to some people, and they will say to you that common sachet water on the street, the ordinary woman in the market is also talking about exchange rates having impacted on that. So we would have a lot of issues to deal with here. So we must have a managed approach to the determination of our foreign exchange rate. A two-tier system may be what we want to do, because to the extent that we also have restriction on imports, some people will still want to fund their items that are not on the importation list. Therefore, they will be willing to pay the premium to pay for such items in an alternative market that is also legally recognized, rather than them taking all their transactions into the gray market. So my take is that we need a managed foreign exchange regime, that we could have a two-tier regime, the official rate, which will be focused on essential products that are needed for the growth and development of the economy, and then a second-tier rate where there can be a willing buyer and a willing seller, where people can procure those items that they cannot ordinarily access from the official market.
Considering sometimes the level of debate, trailing public-private partnerships, what do you think that government can do to remove some of the hurdles in the way of that?
Well, one of the key things that investors look for globally is a predictability and certainty of an investment climate. If you see where Nigeria is today, you look at the World Economic Forum Global Competitiveness Index. Not very good for Nigeria. We rank 124 out of 140 countries that were ranked in the current year. And for the World Bank Ease of Doing Business, we rank 170 out of 189 countries. What is gratifying is the fact that government is already taking concerted effort in this regard to improve the investment climate. A committee has now been set up, as we are told, headed by the Vice President, who is now looking into the specific components of what are those key issues limiting the drive for foreign direct investment into our economy. And from all those indicators, the key components they are talking about are access to infrastructure, corruption, access to finance, policy inconsistency, and bureaucratic bottleneck. So across all these platforms, conscious efforts will now be taken to ensure that we improve radically on all of these parameters in a manner that we can make our business climate more investment friendly, more predictability in terms of the way we do things, better macroeconomic stability, and a more competitive economy that can attract the needed investment. In such a climate, then public-private partnership will thrive.
Are we also taking into cognizance?
And also, we don't have to go.
Are we taking into cognizance the fact that, you know, people are not quite aware of sometimes how it works, hence the resistance on the part of the people sometimes?
Well, clearly what we need is more public advocacy and enlightenment. Even for all the players in the sector, more capacity building. Some of the projects that are being launched for PPP are not transactions that have done under PPP before in this climate, even in some countries in Africa. If you take the case in point of the Etios-Aleki-Ekpe Express Road, for example, it is the first full market-based toll road project in the West African sub-region.
Yeah.
It had its own challenges, but today, I mean, the project is still largely executed, and we are all enjoying the benefits of that project. The first 24/7 security patrol on that road, the first 24/7 ambulance services is lit up at night, and repairs and maintenance are being done as and when due. So what we should be doing at federal government level is to identify those quick win projects that can quickly be executed via public-private partnership in the road infrastructure area, in port services, whether it is airport or deep sea port, in the healthcare delivery area, in education sector, etc., etc. And I believe if we do not put too many projects in the marketplace, but go via a building block approach, we will make a success of PPP projects at the federal level as well.
Do you subscribe to the school of thought that says, look, this PPP hasn't really worked as it ought to?
Well, I don't belong to that school of thought, certainly, as it is clear for every learning exercise for human beings, there will always be some itches along the line. It's like a baby that is trying to walk. We won't say that because the baby is falling down, we will then stop that baby from walking. It is part of the process. We will learn through our way. Every country, even in Asia or in Latin America, that have made success of PPP projects, they too went through what we are going through. So it is all about capacity building, consistency of policies, and institutional framework for PPP project development. Train our people, ensure that PPP projects are developed in line with international best practices. There are no shortcuts to PPP. Government must develop business cases before we launch projects into the market to ensure that they are bankable. We must also tender PPP projects competitively so that we can attract the best potential investors to such projects, not PPP projects that will be awarded without following due process.
Mr. Ayo Gbeleyi, immediate past Commissioner for Finance in Lagos, and PPP and infrastructure, public financing professional, thank you for talking to us today. So there you go. That's how we wrap up the show as well, and we appreciate your comments all coming through to us today. We encourage you to please keep them coming through. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Osal.
Well, thank you so much for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun.
Thank you. I'm Sulaiman Alede.